I unearthed 3 terrifying caving experiences that will haunt my dreams forever. I never should have opened that door. The door to the caves. It was a normal Saturday, just me and my creeping curiosity. I had read about the mysterious cave systems nearby, how they whispered secrets of old, treasures lost, and horrors untold. But nothing could prepare me for the dark reality that awaited. The moment I stepped into the cave, a chill clutched my spine. I felt it in my bones, a heavy darkness that seemed alive, breathing around me. The musty scent of wet earth almost felt like it was pulling me down, deeper. Shadows danced in the faint glow of my flashlight, flickering at the edges, teasing and taunting. Strange noises echoed. A distant drip, drip, drip. The soft rustle of something moving in the dark. My heart pounded. Was I alone? I pressed on, compelled by something I couldn't explain, the urge to explore the unknown. And then I stumbled upon the first horror, a grotesque formation that looked eerily like a face distorted, twisted. I shuddered. Was it the rock, or was it something more? My skin crawled, and just when I thought it couldn't get worse, the whispers started. Soft at first, like the wind through trees. But then louder. Crystal clear. Get out, go back, they hissed. Panic surged through me. My hands trembled. I could feel the tightness in my chest, the lump in my throat. I had to turn around, but the thought of backtracking through the darkness was unbearable. My flashlight flickered. I froze. In that instant, the beam illuminated something behind me, a figure, shadowy and impossibly tall. My breath hitched, and in that moment, horror erupted. I was stuck. The figure moved closer, and I was paralyzed by fear. My heart raced, thoughts screamed in my mind, my body felt heavy, and then, just before I could scream, the darkness swallowed me whole as a deafening slam echoed through the cave. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air was thick with grief, the darkness clung like a funeral shroud. I struggled to breathe, to comprehend where I was or what had just happened. The last thing I registered was that terrible slam, resonating through the vast cavern and reverberating in my skull like the toll of a death knell. Now I lay pressed against the cold stone floor, panic-streaked and stricken, every atom of my being begging for sunlight and safety. As I unsteadily rose to my feet, my flashlight flickered back to life, casting a wretched glow across the cavern walls. The ethereal face I had seen before warped grotesquely, its features twisting in ways that defied nature. It grinned with sharp, rock-like teeth, and I could swear I saw its hollow eyes glisten with a wet sheen, watching me. I stepped back, but the ground slipped beneath my feet, pulling me dangerously closer to a dark abyss that opened at the back of the cave. I caught glimpses of jagged rocks and an inky void that whispered promises of eternal darkness, drawing me toward it as if it were whispering my name. Go, the whispers curled around my wrists, constricting like a snake, intertwining with my very thoughts. I wanted to flee, but my legs felt like sandbags filled with despair. I was rooted, imprisoned by the cacophony of shadows and the haunting faces carved into shapes unseen. There were not just the 1 or 2 faces I witnessed before, there were dozens, no, hundreds of them pressing against the stone as I rotated slowly, their features a mosaic of torment and hunger. Then, a sound shattered my frozen horror, footfalls, unmistakably real and echoing from deeper within the cave. Someone or something was advancing, each step reverberating with a malicious intent. I groped for my phone, desperate for light, then cursed when the screen refused to illuminate. The whispers intensified, almost raucous now, siphoning the air of courage and breathing despair into the very marrow of my bones. With the footsteps growing louder, a realization gripped. The figure I had seen earlier was not merely an apparition. It was coming back. I turned and was met with absolute darkness. The space behind me had morphed into an impenetrable shadow, absorbing every beam of light and every ounce of hope. I took a tentative step forward, heart pounding, but it felt futile, as though the ground was both a trap and an anchor. Then, something miraculous happened. The ground underfoot shifted, almost alive, writhing like 1,000 worms. I could hear dull thumps of stone against stone, a rhythm emerging from the abyss. It was as if whatever dwelled in this suffocating pitch blackness was orchestrating its appearance for what purpose, I could not fathom. Suddenly, the whispers evolved into a symphony of voices, chanting in languages I didn't recognize, but each syllable tore through me like glass. I pressed my hands against my ears, feeling the reverberations deep inside my skull. The footsteps stopped, and there was silence, a brief stillness before the hammering intensity of dread invaded my senses once again. It was then that I noticed something encroaching from the shadows. It was not the figure this time but a series of crawling shapes writhing over the ground toward me. They were formless, churning and swirling, like the fabric of horror being stitched together anew, pieces of skin and rock melding together, creating a grotesque semblance of a crawling creature. I turned to run, desperation fueling my legs like never before, and for a fleeting moment, I glimpsed a tunnel off to my right, carved into the stone. I directed my steps toward it, but as I did, the ground quaked, and the multitude of limbs surged forward, the cacophony of shrieks now a tangible force that threatened to drag me down. As I lunged for the tunnel's opening, something rose from the depths with unimaginable speed, a ghastly hand, serrated nail stretching out to seize me. I barely avoided its grasp, tumbling into the crevice, but suddenly the tunnel began to collapse around me, rocks crumbling as blocks of stone and sharp debris crashed down. Each breath felt like a fragile candle in the wind, and in a panic, I cried out for help, praying to be rescued from this living nightmare. But my shouts reverberated through the cave, swallowed by the hungry darkness, and then, as I lay entombed within the encroaching rocks, the whispering increased, now entreating, seductive. "Join us! Join us!" Forever the darkness pulsed, beckoning me with open arms. I thought I could feel a cold breath upon my neck, moist and chilling, as I turned to face the creature that hovered just beyond the reach of my flashlight beam. Its low growl mingled with the whispering voices, and it moved closer. Just before it lunged, I stumbled back, and all went black. In that moment, I could have sworn I heard a familiar voice among the chaos, a voice that had once promised to protect me. My heart sank as the recognition hit me, and the horrifying realization struck as I whispered into the void, "Lila." Before I could process the idea that she was trapped here too, a jagged shadow erupted from the crumbling ceiling above me, and darkness enveloped all. There was no light. The void wrapped around me like a suffocating shroud, thick and oppressive. I flailed, arms outstretched, fingertips brushing cold stone, gritty and rough against my skin. My heart thundered in my chest, each pulse echoing in the stillness. It felt like being inside a coffin, buried deep beneath the earth. I gasped, the air tasting metallic, as if I had swallowed iron filings. "Lila." I called, my voice tight and small, barely echoing before being drowned by a wave of silence. A deep sense of loss enveloped me, and I could feel tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. The weight of the darkness was crushing, pressing against my body like the hands of the dead, pulling me down, down, where the air was stale, where hope couldn't survive. Suddenly, the walls trembled. A low rumble vibrated through the ground beneath me, followed by the unmistakable sound of stone grinding against stone. I scrambled up, my nails scratching against the rough surface, and I pressed my back against the wall, as though I could meld into it and disappear. It was a futile effort. As I felt the shadows twist around me, something shifted in the depths, a whisper of movement just beyond my reach. With trembling limbs, I summoned the courage to turn my flashlight on again, but it flickered ominously before illuminating an elongated corridor shrouded in mist. An entrance appeared, an escape route perhaps, or some trap crafted by the malignant spirit that wrenched me down into this abyss. I hesitated, my instincts screaming at me to run, but curiosity compelled me. Each step down that phantom hallway felt like walking through a nightmare, the silence heavy, pregnant with dread. A distant sound reached my ears, a soft, sorrowful wail that pulled at the strings of my heart. Then it came again, clearer this time. "Help me." The voice froze my blood. I recognized it instinctively. "Lila!" I cried, but the response was another sorrowful plea, this time coupled with the unmistakable sound of rasping laughter that echoed off the damp stone. Desperation fueled my movement. I stumbled down the corridor, heart racing as I traced my hand along the grimy wall. Instinctively, I felt Lila's presence. It was impossible to be mistaken, no matter how twisted her voice had become. Every step forward tore at my sanity, chipping little pieces away as the ghastly laughter grew. The shadows around me writhed and twisted, taking on forms both familiar and deeply unsettling, intertwining with fragments of my memory's happy moments that had been drowned in darkness. "Help! Please!" I shouted into the darkness, but my words were swallowed whole. The shadows closed in like a flock of feral crows, their silent wings brushing against my skin until I could feel hot breath grazing my neck, chilling to the bone. Then, a shadow detached itself from the rest, swirling violently, merging with the fog until it took on the shape of a figure I recognized. Lila, or some grotesque imitation of her. Her hair floated around her face as though her body was submerged in water, and her eyes held a hollow sadness that froze my blood. "Lila?" I dared, extending a hand toward her, but she bore a grin that was far from the warmth I knew. "Help me." The words tumbled from her lips, a sound fragile and broken, sending shivers racing down my spine. I felt a lurch of emotion, wanting to embrace her, but as I approached, her form wavered, flickering like a dying flame. "Stay away!" she shrieked suddenly, her voice twisting into a fevered chaos. "It's not what you think. Don't let it take you too." Before I could process her warning, the shadows erupted around me. Tendrils of darkness lashed out, grasping my arms and legs, pulling me toward those hungry eyes that certainly weren't Lila's. I could feel the presence behind it, something ancient, something insatiable, like a predator with bared fangs lurking just beyond the veil. No. I want. With every ounce of strength, I tore away from the grasping darkness, pushing against the tendrils that looped around my limbs. My breath halted against the intrusion of icy fingers clamoring for my soul. I turned and ran, a scream lodged deep in my throat as I bolted deeper into the labyrinth of despair. The corridor seemed to stretch infinitely, with no end in sight as gravity seemed to shift unexpectedly, pulling me toward fractured memories. I stumbled through the haze, visions breaking forth, images of Lila morphed into nightmarish landscapes of blood and bone. The walls throbbed and pulsed as though the cave itself was a live predator waiting to consume me whole. Then, just as I thought I might be able to outpace the collapsing shadows, I reached a fork in the corridor. To the left, a glimmering light beckoned, flickering like a beacon, almost inviting me to trust it. To the right, the path spiraled into deeper shadows, an endless maw filled with howls of despair that clawed at my sanity. The shadows behind me surged forward, eager to tighten their grasp. I could feel them closing in with wicked glee, an almost sentient form of darkness that craved my essence and fed off my fear. I was running out of time, and then, a chilling realization struck me. The voice that had been pleading for help was now mocking me, weaving a cruel taunt from the shadows, and I could no longer distinguish what was real and what had become a twisted illusion. "Choose." The voice echoed, no longer Lila's but something far more sinister. In a moment of utter terror, I felt the pull of the shadows behind me, heard the desperate screeches of what could have been Lila's cries, felt them intertwining as I was forced to decide. I took a step toward the shimmering light, my heart racing, but the instant I moved, a chilling laughter erupted through the tunnel, a promise of something worse as the darkness surged, and in that moment, I could feel myself unraveling, suspending between dread and hope. It was only a heartbeat later that I found myself trapped again, the ground quaking beneath my feet. Whatever lay ahead would demand a sacrifice. I took another step forward, but the shadows surged forth, and I was torn in two chilling directions toward the light that could perhaps save me, or deeper into the void, where horror awaited. I was haunted by the chilling notion that the choice had already been made for me as the darkness broke free with a deafening roar. The corridor rumbled violently, as if the very earth resented my presence. I felt a tremor within my bones, a rumor of something ancient and vile awakening to my distraction. It craved me, and I could sense its hunger growing, wrapping around my heart with every pulse of fear. The laughter, a cacophony of demonic glee, drowned out my thoughts, forcing me to surrender to instinct that I turned toward the beckoning light. Desperation clawed at me. It seemed otherworldly, a lingering memory of safety and warmth that I dared to yearn for, despite the malevolent shadows closing in. With a burst of energy, I lunged forward, forcing my limbs to obey, driven by the primal will to survive. As I neared the light, it flickered like a dying star, illuminating something door, gnarled and ancient, carved with symbols I couldn't comprehend. My fingers brushed against its surface, cool to the touch, and a potent wave of electricity pulsed through me. I took a shuddering breath and pushed it open. A blinding light greeted me, and I stumbled through, momentarily blinded. As my vision cleared, reality twisted into something grotesque. I was no longer in the dark corridor but stood in what felt like an echo of my childhood home, the living room saturated in a sickly sepia tone. The walls were lined with framed photographs, their subjects smiling until I looked closer. The faces wore expressions of torment, eyes glassy and pleading, as if the images themselves were trapped in their own prison. "Mom!" I called out, my voice trembling, the shadows of memories suffocating me. Nothing responded except a low hum, a resonance that vibrated with sorrow. And then I saw Hermie mother, standing at the end of the hall, her back turned towards me. "Lila?" I whispered in confusion, instinctively reaching out. But she remained eerily still, her hair a cascading waterfall of darkness that seemed to blend seamlessly into the engulfing shadows. "Turn around," I begged, each word laden with a mixture of desire and dread. She stayed suspended in time, an impossibly vivid mirage against the backdrop of terror. I felt my heart grip in a vice as horrible memories surged, overflowing like a flood. The accident, the funeral, the haunting emptiness. "Help me!" the resonant whisper threaded through me like a noose, and I recoiled. "No. You're not her!" I screamed, my voice cracking. But my protest was lost to the insidious whispers swirling around me, pulling me into a spiral of despair. Suddenly, the images wavered. Dark tendrils erupted from the walls like living vines, thrumming with rage, and the laughter returned, echoing throughout the hollow space as it morphed into a chorus of distorted voices. "You're lost. You will never find your way." I took a step back, dread pooling in my gut as I realized I could not stay here. Whatever was lurking in this space fed off despair, and I felt its claws digging ever deeper into my flesh. I turned to flee, but something stopped me, a cold presence, breathing down my neck. Fingertips of ice grazed my skin as I turned, terror stealing my breath. The figure, indistinct and ever-shifting, loomed closer, and I saw facets of the past splintering through it, friends I had lost, loved ones who had been devoured by darkness. They cried out in anguish with faces warped in torment, each voice layering into a deafening cacophony that reverberated through my mind. In desperation, I dashed back towards the gnarled door, but it slammed shut, locked by the entity that had ensnared me. The shadows coiled around me, whispering promises of dissolution, tightening their grip until I could hardly breathe. "Your choice has already been made," they hissed, laughter slicing through the air like a razor. Surrendered. I clawed at the door, pounding on its surface, but the shadows surged, enveloping me in their smothering embrace. In that moment, I felt a flicker of heat amid the cold, a memory of love that shimmered through the bleakness. I pushed against the despair, grasping at that warmth, and with every ounce of will, I screamed, "I won't let you take me," as if the act alone fractured the hold on me. The shadows recoiled, howling in rage as a blinding light surged from within, igniting the darkness. But before I could grasp my salvation, something cold slithered around my ankle, yanking me back down into the abyss. And then, just as I believed I could conquer it all, a horrific, wrenching laugh filled the space around me, growing louder until it was all-consuming. The door to escape shattered, splintering into a million shards of darkness, revealing a roiling storm where the light had been, an endless night ready to devour what remained of my sanity. In that instant, I realized what had been lost. The shadows weren't just alive, they were the embodiment of every fear I had ever known, feeding on the darkest corners of my mind, struggling to twist reality into a new form of hopelessness. "Wake up! Wake up!" I screamed, scrambling against the invisible grasp. But the darkness pulled me deeper still, and as my vision faded into nothingness, I heard Lila's voice in a grotesque fusion of pleading and laughter, and then something far worse struck me. I could hear her whispering secrets about what awaited me. It was then that I collided with the terrible truth: I was far from an innocent participant in this wicked game. I had chosen to descend into the heart of my nightmares, and in doing so, I had awakened something far beyond comprehension, something that would stop at nothing until it claimed me. And then it whispered, "You're already mine." In that moment, the cavern around me trembled, and the darkness surged one final time, swallowing my scream whole as it slammed everything into a void where my reality shattered irrevocably. I plunged into a nothingness that felt thicker than air, a suffocating absence of light where the world around me shattered into jagged fragments of silence. Time lost its grip, seconds became hours as I floated, weightless yet bound by chains of despair. Then, suddenly, I was spat out into a dimly lit expanse, where the ground pulsed like a living creature beneath me, thrumming with an otherworldly energy. Dazed, I scanned my surroundings. The air stank of rot and decay, a fetid breeze curling around me, coaxing the bile to rise in my throat. Shadows danced in the corners of my vision, flitting in and out like distorted memories. I stumbled forward, instinctively seeking anything familiar amidst the terrible unknown, but every step drew me deeper into the bowels of this uncanny realm. Then, echoes of laughter spiraled around me, chilling my blood. Each peal seemed to emanate from the very walls, as if the darkness was mocking my plight. "Lost, lost, lost," it taunted, its voices layered like an unholy choir. "Find your friends. They're waiting." "Who?" I shouted into the void, desperation clawing at my chest. "Who's there?" But the laughter only crescendoed, a cruel serenade that tugged at the fragile threads of my sanity. I pressed on blindly, heart racing, until I stumbled upon a cavernous chamber where something ancient writhed beneath a surface black as night. The ground was dotted with grotesque formations, spines jutting upward like the reminders of long-forgotten horrors. My pulse quickened as my eyes adjusted. Figures hung suspended in the air around me like macabre marionettes, their bodies twisted in abject terror. Each one bore the familiar visage of someone I had lost: friends, family, and even strangers who had once brushed my life with warmth. Their mouths moved in silent pleas, their eyes wide with unending dread, recounting tales of anguish that tore at my heart. "Help us," they mouthed in unison. The plea echoed through me, sending icy fingers spiraling down my spine. "Stop!" I screamed, clasping my hands over my ears, as if I could drown out their specters. "Let them go." As rage surged within me, the shadows flickered like flames caught in a storm, revealing fleeting glimpses of their torment: a small child, crying for a mother, a young girl whispering secrets that twisted into shrieks. The air crackled, the very fabric of this place seeming to pulse in answer to my cry, shimmering with each revelation of despair. But one voice rose above the symphony of anguish, cutting through my pain, a guttural hiss that felt both familiar and monstrous. "You're too late," it breathed, thick with malice. "They belong to me now, as will you." That I spun to face the source of the voice, tinged with the knowledge that what stood before me was not a specter, but something far worse: a reflection of my own darkness. It loomed larger than life, formed of writhing shadows that twisted and coiled like serpents. I could see the faces of my friends woven into its form, their eyes staring desperately from within, forever silenced, forever trapped in a kaleidoscope of fear. No. I lunged forward, but it thickened, tendrils of darkness wrapping around my wrists, pulling me towards its core. "Let them go. Please. Do you think you deserve their freedom?" The voice slithered around me, choking my cries. "You abandoned them just as you abandoned the truth." In a moment of clarity amidst the suffocation, I remembered the truth buried in my heart, the guilt that had eroded everything and stained my soul. The accident was my fault, a careless choice that cost them everything. The shadows were their tormentors, and fed on the bleakness of my regret. In that instant of realization, my resolve hardened. "I will not let you use me as your pawn anymore," I screamed, ripping apart the dark vine clutches around me, fueled by fierce remorse. The shadows writhed angrily at my defiance, recoiling as if struck. A piercing scream erupted from the figure, unleashing a surge of wailing echoes that filled the cavern. The faces of my lost friends grimaced in agony as the darkness began to split. revealing a bright fissure right beneath their suspended forms. No. My own voice thundered, thick with raw energy. You will not claim me. As the fissure widened, pulsating and glowing, I felt its pull, a siren's call beckoning me, redemptive yet terrifying. But the darkness battled back, thickening, trying to seal the rift, its laughter transforming into a cacophony of agonized wails. "I'll save them!" I shouted above the chaos, bursting forth into the rift as tendrils of shadow lashed out in fury. I braced against the force pulling me, reaching for my lost friends, feeling warmth amidst the cold flicker of hope igniting my path. But then the ground trembled violently, and a powerful surge erupted, knocking me from my feet as the cavern crumpled around us, sections of the ceiling collapsing in a shower of dust and shadow. Each scream of horror faded into a single horrifying realization: I was being dragged down, feeling the weight of the shadows consume the last vestiges of my resolve, and then, just before the darkness sealed around me, I saw her across the chasm. My mother's face emerged from the void. Tears streamed down her cheeks, her lips mouthing the words "help me." The world imploded, fragments of reality fading to an echoing silence, all its brightness drawn into the heart of despair, leaving me with the most terrifying truth of all: not only were they lost in the shadows, so was I. The darkness became tangible, a thick fog that snagged at my limbs and dragged me downward, deeper into the abyss. My heart thundered in my chest, each beat resonating like the death knell of my hope. Was my mother really there? Had I glimpsed her, or was it merely a cruel illusion conjured by this forsaken realm? In the chaos, I clawed at the air, gasping for breath as the ground tightened around me like a vice. An oppressive weight bore down, throbbing with the remnants of the spirits that had been swallowed whole. I felt their icy presence, whispers swirling around, chilling my spine with their wretched lamentation. They knew I belonged there, that I was but a drop in their ocean of sorrow. The fissure above me shimmered further, a distant glow trapped beyond layers of fear and despair, promising salvation. I fought to reach it, a fleeting spark enticing me from the looming depths of hopelessness. Yet as I stretched my fingers toward the light, the shadows lashed out, gripping my wrists, pulling me back, a chorus of shrieks rising in fury. "Stay!" a voice hissed from the depths of the void, thick and suffocating. I turned to face it, and the outline of a figure began to solidify in the roiling shadows. With every thud of my heart, its grotesque features morphed into familiar faces, twisting into my friends and family, their mouths twisted into grins that stole the warmth from my thoughts. "Join us," they beckoned, their eyes vacant, vast pits of despair that drank the light from the unearthed. I cried, "You're not real. You're nothing but shadows." "Not just shadows, little one," the voice sneered, its laughter echoing with the timbre of buried secrets. "We are part of you, reflections of your guilt, your despair. Embrace us, and you'll find your place among us forever. No. I roared, fighting against their pull. Memories of laughter, love, and shared joy flooded my mind, bright and vivid, pushing back against the swell of darkness. "You don't own me. I am not yours." The air crackled with tension. My defiance was a flickering flame amidst an oncoming storm. As I screamed against their encroaching embrace, I thought of my mother's face, her pain mingling with undeniable love. The fissure glowed brighter, responding to the tumult in my heart, offering a chance to break free. In a moment of clarity, I surged anew, igniting every ounce of willpower to wrench myself from the depths. The shadows shrieked in anger, pinching my skin with cold, clammy tendrils. "Come back!" they howled, an orchestra of despair crescendoing around me. And then, with a force fueled by desperation, I leapt toward the glowing fissure, eyes locked onto that spectral light. Just as I reached the edge, the ground beneath me split apart, the chaos erupting into a chasm that yawned wide, a monstrous maw ready to consume everything in its path, including my frantic hand. Fingers grazed the edge of light, almost there, almost free. But just as quickly, a powerful force yanked me back. My body tore through the air, crashing against a rocky outcropping, pain flaring through me as jagged edges found tender flesh. I rolled to a stop, breathless and teetering on the brink of consciousness, the edges of my vision darkening. But then, I heard a low, dreadful whisper that wrapped around my heart, chilling the blood in my veins. You can't escape. You owe us everything. The shadows shifted and twisted, forming an impossible silhouette of my mother, suspended above the chasm that stretched back into nothing. She stared down at me, eyes dark pools that beckoned, lips mouthing the words I could not hear but felt deep within. In that moment, the ground quaked violently once more, the fissure below widening ominously, swallowing the feeble light and shrouding me in a blanket of pitch darkness. The air grew thick with despair, and the laughter of my lost companions returned, dissonant and overwhelming, as the hollow feeling of dread tethered itself to my heart, and then, just as the darkness threatened to consume me entirely, a chilling realization crashed upon me, a snare in my heart that would never let go. I had not just failed to save them. I had set them free to this world. Help me, those words echoed, but this time, I recognized the voice. Before I could react, something wrapped around my foot, cold, slimy, and inescapable. A grotesque shadow crawled forth from the depths, larger than before, an unspeakable horror taking form, as dark tendrils lashed at my body. My screams got lost in the cacophony, but the shadows only grew louder, more pronounced. And as they seeped into my soul, wrapping around all that was left of my humanity, the last remnants of light flickered and died, leaving nothing but a deafening silence. In that agonizing moment, as the face of my mother shifted to a distorted smile, I realized the most terrifying truth: she was not here to save me. She was here to claim me. As I felt my mind begin to unravel, the final strings were severed, leaving me with one crushing thought amidst the decay of reality: I was the monster now. The shadows shrieked as if the very essence of pain coalesced into a singular cry that resonated through the darkness, vibrating within the walls of my mind. I was enveloped in a horror that was more than just the creatures that lurked in the black. It was the dawning realization that I might never again feel the warmth of love or the light of hope. With my mind splintering under the weight of despair, I tried to crawl away, inching backward against the jagged stones that clawed at my skin. The grotesque figure looming above seemed to pulse with malevolence, each shift of its form revealing glimpses of lost souls trapped within a haze of agony. "You cannot escape," it hissed, the voice echoing through the void, intertwining with the dread that clung to my very being. Panicked, I grasped for something, anything around me. Fingers brushed against a tattered piece of fabric, soaked in something cold and sticky. As I raised it to my eyes, a vision pierced through the darkness. It was my mother's dress, the vibrant hue of crimson now dulled, mottled with the weight of countless tragedies. The fabric slipped from my hand, a whisper of her scent drowned by the suffocating stench of decay. "Mother!" I screamed into the abyss. "Was it you? Or were you just a dream?" The shadows writhed, and from their depths emerged laughter, a cacophony of haunting giggles, twisted and mocking, disintegrating my resolve. "This is your legacy, child," came the voice again, now layered with a chorus of familiar voices wailing my name. "You are cursed to dwell here among the forgotten." I felt the ground begin to tremble once more, as if it were alive, a sentient being writhing beneath me. A frigid wind whipped through the tunnel, carrying the echoes of distant screams, distant homes, distant lives where I no longer belonged. The whispers urged me to succumb, to bow before the darkness and accept my fate among the souls severed to the abyss. "No!" I cried defiantly. "I won't give in. I won't be one of you." The fabric of my consciousness strained against the fear enveloping me, a fragile thread holding on to the echo of my former self. Suddenly, the shadows swirled around me, forming a cyclone of darkness that pulled at my limbs with ferocious intensity. I felt the cold tendrils inch closer, wrapping themselves around my ankles and slowly creeping up my legs as I struggled to resist, but exhaustion threatened to overpower me. It was an endless pulse of dread, a rhythm that synced with my faltering heartbeat. "Fight, fight!" I screamed within my mind, but the words felt hollow in the void. Just then, there was a shift as I sensed something emerging from the shadows, a presence different from the suffocating weight of despair that consumed me. It felt alive, a warmth seeking to cut through the pervasive chill. My breath caught in my throat, and with it came a flicker of hope, a faint outline forming, illuminating my surroundings with a shimmering glow. Through the shape, I discerned the contours of a figure, a girl reaching toward me, her features indistinguishable yet achingly familiar. "Help me!" I cried out, my voice raw and breaking against the howling winds of the shadows. Please, help me, the figure hesitated, looming in the darkness, as if deciding. The grasp of the shadows tightened around my throat, squeezing relentlessly as if trying to silence my pleas. I could see her face now, swimming in and out of focus, a blend of innocence marred by residual darkness, the edges of her being crumbling little by little. Don't trust them, she urged, her voice barely audible above the screams, they will consume all that you are. You must remember who you are. Her words ignited a fury within me, a spark that lent strength to my failing limbs. I shuddered and recalled every happy memory, every moment that felt alive, and I felt the light inside me fight back against the grip of the abyss. But the darker presence within the shadows sensed my resolve, and the atmosphere thickened with malice, twisting the memories in my mind to grotesque visions of loss and betrayal, distorting them into nooses of despair. Do you really believe her? Came the mocking voice of my mother's spectre, curling in the corners of my vision like a serpent. We are all you have left. You know this. No. I screamed, and with a surge of desperate energy, I reached out toward the flickering figure of the girl, willing the bonds of darkness to loosen their grip. Help me. Please. But just before our fingers could touch, the ground erupted violently, splitting into jagged fissures that roared like a trapped beast. The dark tendrils erupted into a frenzy, thrashing against the bricks of my foundation, screaming, crying, and taunting. You are ours. You will never escape. And then, the shadows surged forward, a wave of darkness crashing over me, swallowing everything whole. The touch of the girl faded, her silhouette consumed in a whirlpool of malevolence. All I could register was sheer terror as I struggled to keep my head above the tide. My body was weightless as I felt myself tumble deeper into the chasm, the whispers echoing relentlessly, "Embrace your fate, child," the chorus taunted, "for you have already begun your descent. You are but a shadow now." And as I plunged headfirst into the dark abyss, a familiar thrill surged through me, a bitter jolt of recognition. I felt a flicker of something lurking beneath my skin, an insatiable hunger that had drawn my lost companions to the dark, and now was awakening in me. In that moment, a decision loomed in my heart, throbbing with forbidden desire. Would I succumb and join the chorus of darkness, or would I fight through the torment, even if it meant unleashing a far more terrible truth hidden within? As 1,000 voices screamed my name, I closed my eyes, and the darkness rushed in like a tidal wave, tearing at the very essence of who I was. With that, the jagged edges of my reality splintered completely, shattered into a million shards, leaving behind nothing but a heartbeat echoing in the unfathomable void, solitary and wretched, a final, desperate plea: have I truly become the monster? And then the abyss fell silent. In the silence that followed, a foreboding stillness cloaked the abyss, wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud. It offered no solace, only an oppressive weight that seemed to crush my very essence. Was I still alive? Did I exist beyond this terrifying void? The sensation of drifting lingered. I was no longer bound by the frailty of flesh, yet I was acutely aware of every cry within me, every flicker of the soul clawing for recognition, for release. Then, in that Stygian darkness, the pulse began again, slowly at first, like an ominous heartbeat thrumming in the far recesses of my mind. "No," I whispered, the sound barely escaping my lips as it ricocheted off nothingness. Was it a warning or an entreaty? I needed to open my eyes, acclimate myself to the shadows that now felt alarmingly familiar. When I cracked open my eyelids, frostbitten echoes danced around my vision, and I found myself standing, not falling, in a desolate landscape, devoid of light or warmth. The ground was littered with skeletal remains, fragments of humanity twisting into grotesque shapes that told heart-wrenching stories of despair. I took a tentative step forward, my heart racing as I struggled to comprehend the horror that stretched infinitely in all directions. The shadows whispered again, but this time, there was clarity. They were not merely echoes of lost souls, they were the unwilling guardians of a dark legacy. "Welcome, O harbinger of fear," they chanted, a cadence that rolled like thunder above me. "You have unearthed the truth, and now you shall bear witness." Those words reverberated through me, igniting a forgotten ember of defiance. What truth? I demanded, thundering against the overwhelming tide of sorrow. What am I meant to witness? In answer, the landscape morphed, and a kaleidoscope of visions erupted from the darkness, unfurling like the petals of a monstrous flower. I was suddenly thrust into cruel memories. I saw my mother again, her face twisted in sorrow, holding a blood-stained dress as tears streamed down her cheeks. The shadows melted away to reveal scenes of despair, but woven within them was the vivid specter of joy, a cruel reminder of what once was. The laughter of children echoed, bright and innocent, only to be smothered by the cold tendrils of despair lurking just beyond reach, and then, emerging from the shadows, I saw them, the lost souls. Figures I recognized, faces etched into my memory from forgotten days, their eyes wide with eternal anguish, mouths opening in silent screams. They were my friends, family, all those who had slipped into the abyss before me, now mere remnants of a life stolen by darkness. "They are waiting," a voice hissed, its tone both haunting and mocking. "You are one with us now." My breath caught in my throat as I stumbled backward. Panic surged through me, an electric current that bore witness to their plight. No. I am not one of you. I refuse to be trapped. Refusal is but the first step toward acceptance, the shadows mocked, their echoing laughter sending chills through my spine. You must learn. You must remember. The ground quaked beneath me, and I fell. As I hit the surface, I suddenly found myself in a swirling tempest of light and shadow, a vortex of chaos where reality twisted. I glimpsed fleeting moments of joy, faces of loved ones I had long lost, smiles intertwined with renowned laughter, abruptly snatched away by shadows. Each one became a shard stabbing through my heart, and with every torment I encountered, the shadows encroached closer until they threatened to engulf my very being. Then I saw her, the flickering figure of the girl from before, glowing in the murk, desperately reaching out. "Fight it!" she implored, her voice threading through the anguish surrounding us. "You are strong. Remember." But for every glimmer of hope she provided, the darkness hurled defiance at me, pushing against the beauty of my memories, lusting to reclaim them. It constricted around me, pulling tighter with every pulse of despair. "You seek to resist." They hissed in unison, a tempest of whispers swirling around me like a storm. "You are powerless here." Tremors of uncertainty rippled through me. Each moment was a duality. Fear clawed at my insides, yet remnants of love banished those whispers into a distant realm. A war raged within me, one that threatened to tear the very fabric of my soul apart. I could hear their imperfections, the sadness echoing off crumbling walls, vibrating with a frequency that promised to strip away my memory, twist it into submission, leaving me as empty as the lost souls around me. But just as despair began to consume me, the visage of my mother appeared once more, her face no longer a ghostly veneer but a true reflection of love and understanding. Her lips moved silently but fiercely, and I felt sunlit warmth seep into the depths of my being. "Let them go," she cried, though no sound came forth. "Break free." The shadows writhed angrily, erupting in furious howls, but her presence illuminated everything around me, urging me to break through the barriers holding me prisoner. The urge to escape surged through me like a wildfire, igniting a power I had overlooked in my despair. I thrust my hands forward, reaching for both the girl and the light of my mother, unwilling to surrender to the darkness that had claimed so much from me. But then, just as I thought I could grasp hold of that hope, the ground ruptured beneath me, splitting into unfathomable crevices that yawned like gaping maws. I felt my body plummet downward, a cold abyss of despair swallowing me whole, and a voice echoed from the depths, "Flee if you must, but know this, all darkness seeks the light. The truth you hide away will be your undoing. The monster within you will rise." And as I descended into the maw of the void, spiraling into the unknown, terror unfurled inside me like a black flower, and I realized, it wasn't just my fate at stake. The hunger ignited in the shadows was growing, seething for the moment it could consume the last vestiges of my humanity. As I spiraled deeper into the abyss, the sensation of plummeting morphed into a strange kind of weightlessness, as though the very laws of existence had unraveled around me. The shadows throbbed in sync with my heart, a pulsating reminder that they were not merely a backdrop to my despair, they were alive, and with every passing second, they craved something from me. Something beyond mere witness. The air shifted, coiling thick like smoke, curling into my lungs and eliciting a desperate cough. I landed with a jarring thud on a surface both unyielding and slick, the echoes of my impact dissolving into an expanse of darkness that cloaked the walls around me. I tried to push myself up, but my limbs felt heavy, as if cast in lead. Above, the remnants of that light a spectral glow flickered, the last vestiges of my hope now a distant star obscured by the impenetrable layers of night. Then, I heard its whispers escalating to a frenzied cacophony, an ominous chant that rippled through the air like 1,000 unseen hands grasping for my soul. The shadowy figures materialized, coalescing into shapes that evoked terror and despair. Faces that had once belonged to my loved ones twisted grotesquely, their eyes hollow yet bound by an unbreakable chain of longing. Each one distinct, yet each one shared in the agony that threatened to pull me back into the clutches of despair. "Join us," they intoned, their voices a malevolent echo. "Your suffering feeds us. Your despair is our nourishment." That in a moment of clarity, I blinked through stinging tears, focusing on the indecipherable shapes that loomed before me. Someone familiar screamed out, their plea slicing through the disarray. I squinted, forcing my vision to align with reality, and there she was, the girl, standing at the edge of my peripheral vision, her radiant light flickering in defiance of the dark. Panic tugged at my heart, and I yelled, "What do they want? What am I supposed to do?" "Face them. Embrace the truth," she implored, her own voice rising above the tide of agony that enveloped us. In her eyes, I perceived a glimmer of recognition, a silent understanding that reverberated deep within my essence. But as quickly as hope surged, it twisted into fear as the shadows danced closer, their grasp wrapping around my throat like icy fingers, constricting with a relentless pressure. "No." I gasped, my voice barely a whisper. "Not like this." The shadows writhed with derision, their grotesque forms lunging forward as they shrieked in unison, "You cannot deny what you are." And in that moment, the darkness unveiled my past, me sins, my regret, laid bare like a gut-wrenching fresco painted with my deepest fears. Every sorrowful moment spilled out, each one meticulously crafted into a tapestry of torment, stitching together lives I had failed to protect. Ripping memories clawed at my Sinisha friend I had betrayed, the lover I had abandoned, each face morphing into the shadows that grasped for me, howling for vengeance. The sinister laughter echoed back, "Embrace the monster. Feed us," I screamed and tore myself away, stumbling backward until I collided with an icy wall that felt alive, pulsing beneath my touch. Gasps echoed in the hollow, a million despairing breaths mingling in a symphony of defeat. Before I could think, my hands flew to my skull, grasping at my hair as bile rose within me. "I am not a monster," I shrieked at the void, desperation clawing at my throat, but they surged closer, a powerful wave of darkness threatening to engulf everything that I thought I knew. "You wish to be free? Then sacrifice what weighs you down," they hissed, as the shadows reached for my heart. Reality twisted, and I felt myself being pulled apart, the fragmented pieces of my spirit at war with one another. Then, through the torment erupting within, a singular thought crystallized, a memory untainted by the shadows, the girl's desperate plea igniting a flicker of resolve. If I could confront my past, confront the darkness within me, perhaps I could unravel the tangled threads of the curse binding us all. I could be the light fighting against the malevolence meandering through my veins. In a swell of courage, I shouted, I refused to surrender. My voice ricocheted through the cavern with a defiance I did not know I possessed, a spark of fire in the encroaching darkness. The shadows recoiled, momentarily stunned by the unexpected resistance. I pushed forward, chasing after the silhouette of the girl's glow, but doubt lay waiting in the wings with an insidious whisper echoing behind me, "The monster within will rise." And then it happened that a piercing howl erupted from the shadows, a cacophony of fury shaking the very foundation of my heart. Tendrils of darkness shot forth, snatching at the last threads of my hope, coiling around my ankles and dragging me back toward the encroaching maw of despair. I glimpsed her face, contorted in horror, as she screamed my name, and with one final desperate plea, she lunged forward, reaching for what was left of me, but the ground disintegrated beneath me, splintering as the shadows surged toward us, their presence a ravenous tide threatening to swallow the remnants of humanity I had clung to. Just as her fingers grazed mine, a blinding light erupted, consuming everything in its path, a flash so brilliant that I felt my very soul ripple with both agony and release. And in that instant, I was overcome with the understanding that would shatter worlds, all dread fractured in the brilliance of a newfound Clarissa truth so profound that it shook the cosmos to its core. And as that knowing swept over me like a rush of celestial wind, darkness whispered soft and insidious in my ear, "Remember, my love. The monster will rise," and just like that, a chasm opened up in front of me, revealing a blinding abyss where echoes of my past bubbled to the surface, the chilling realization dawning upon me. The shadows had always been feeding on the aching hunger within me, and they were no longer the silent spectators. They were awakening, and their darkness had become my own. Awaken, beloved. The chorus beckoned as I fell into the depths, inexorably drawn to a truth too horrifying to comprehend. As I plummeted deeper into oblivion, the unfurling darkness morphed, chiseling away at the edges of my mind. Each heartbeat became a drum echoing through an unyielding void, vibrating against the concepts of reality and identity I had so desperately clung to. The shadows wrapped around me like silk, whispering intimate secrets, lulling me into a serene calm, but beneath their alluring caress brewed a tempest of malice, seeping through the very fabric of my being. Suddenly, I found myself standing in a clearing illuminated by a sickly, pallid glow. Mother's face flickered in and out of vision in the gathering fog, staring at me with those eyes that once brought solace, now brimming with betrayal. "You shouldn't have done this," she muttered, her words like shrapnel, puncturing the cocoon of dread. "You never should have come back. I asked, confusion clawing at my conscience. "What do you mean? I'm here to save. Or to sacrifice?" Her voice twisted, distorting into the essence of despair. "This place, it craves a toll. Your search for redemption has awoken something that eats hope, something that relishes in loss. The threads of regret weave back to you." A flicker of recollection ignited within me. Lila. I felt as though she hovered just out of grasping reach, trapped within the murky depths swirling nearby. With every pang of heartbreak, shadows danced closer, their shapes morphing into familiar faces, faces of those I had loved and lost, each one pleading, each one accusing. They lunged at me, hungry for the warmth of my spirit, forgetting they had been extinguished. I raised my arms defensively, but all I felt was a deepening weight of the choices I had made. I wouldn't trade them for my freedom. I screamed, battling against the rising tide of darkness that flickered, whispering promises of absolution threaded with deceit. But the whispers tightened their noose, squeezing the very hope from my lungs, their taunts echoing incessantly, "Join us. It's too late for you." But with every ounce of defiance still hidden in the cavern of my spirit, I surged forward. "You're wrong. I still have my will. I have my memories." I felt the warmth of truth rise within me as I recalled every laugh, every joyful embrace delivered, each one a fragment of light buried underneath despair's lurking motto. The shadows recoiled, momentarily hesitant, as though they feared the memories more than they craved despair. "Memories don't save you. They trap you," came the hissing chorus, slithering through the ground, clawing for my attention. It lashed out, striking at the vulnerability within, locking onto the spectral form of Lila. She emerged momentarily from the murk, reaching for me with desperate eyes. "Help me!" She choked, lost among groans and laughs that filled the darkness, drowning in a riot of anguish, begging for release. In a breathless instant, realization crashed down like a thunderbolt. Lila was the embodiment of my guilt, an echo of a promise I had failed to keep. She became a vessel through which all my sorrow radiated, but to free her, I would have to confront the truth hiding in the shadows of my heart, the monster that longed to rise. "Face your past, confront me," I howled, engaging the shadows that flitted closer with indignant fury. The ground bucked violently, extending serpentine tendrils toward me with cold precision, and yet within the turmoil, I lunged toward Lila, reaching for her with longing, the last grasp of hope, and just like that, I felt everything dissolve, the weight of darkness, my very fears shredding and crumbling beneath the sacred form of acknowledgement. "No one here has to be a sacrifice. I won't be your tool anymore." A blazing light erupted from within me, an expulsion of every moment I had chained to memory. Each fear exploded forth like thunder, illuminating not those lost souls but infusing the cavern with warmth. The light began to pulse, sending the shadows reeling backward, screeching as their own forms began to disintegrate, whittling like sticks in flame. For the first time, I felt control surging through me, an undeniable connection to the warmth of my love, every cherished moment no longer bound by remorse, rather, pure aliveness. "You don't own me," I declared, the glow radiating brighter, banishing the looming darkness that had persistently claimed my existence. Yet amidst the radiance, a chilling voice cut through, deeper and more foreboding. "You think you have triumphed?" It thundered, tendrils reaching for my essence from the edges of reality. The whispers built a cacophony of rage awakened within the shadows, fury unabated, embers scalding hot with every claimed soul. This was merely a spark. There is much more to come, and then, in the trembling aftermath, I woke. I was lying on the cave floor, wrenched from the ties of an unreal nightmare. The haunting echoes ambled from the depths of consciousness, but nothing rose from the shadows. I gasped for cool air, and yet a twist of anguish quelled my breath. The cave felt alive, the walls pulsing with each heartbeat I possessed. Something had stirred within. I stumbled out, but dread didn't relent. I became aware that I wasn't free, I was simply at the eye of the storm. Moments were blurring, realms twisting in the fissure of existence, the shadows whispering darkly that the monster within me had only just begun to rise. That a chilling realization dawned as memories began to surface, their faces twisting in unending terror. Lila, lost once more, dear friends, faces blurred and fading amidst laughter now futile. I had learned too late that the game wasn't over. With every step toward the light, darkness lingered closer, and I could feel its cold fingers dancing on my back, and with a haunting echo of the shadows' laughter trailing me, I understood as I stepped back into the world above, I was alive with guilt, and the monster has risen to claim what was left me. Consciousness unshackled yet ensnared by the truth of my being. The last breath I took echoed outside the cave as I looked back. With a shiver it whispered with malevolence, the darkness not defeated, but merely waiting, longing to embrace me again. One day it curled into the wind, "You'll come home."